Warning! The following program contains things that might make you think really hard, scary noises coming from a shadow, and clips from a movie I don't own the rights to. If you are easily frightened, easily susceptible to Jedi mind tricks, or allergic to philosophy, please leave the room now. Viewer discretion is advised.
Wheels was when you get up in the knee and you tread on one. Or Lego.
Lego is...
Or an upturned plug.
No. Lego's worse.
Why?
Because an upturned plug is big, Lego hides in the carpet.
Is there anything worse than an upturned plug for treading on in the middle of the night?
Lego.
A landmine.
I think and therefore I am. I don't fail, I'm just good at finding what doesn't work. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? All of these are very good philosophical questions that you may have heard before. All of the men that said these quotes were great philosophers, but I'm not. Today, instead of talking about science, I thought we could talk about something a little more deep than that. I'm talking about philosophy. Now, you might be asking yourself, what does philosophy have to do with anything? The answer is actually quite simple. Everything. Before we get to looking at philosophy, we need to have a bit of a history lesson. Please draw your attention to the screen. This is the great philosopher Plato, who lived from about 428 BC to 347 BC. Not much is known about the early lives of these philosophers, but we do know quite a bit about Plato's later life. By what we can tell, Plato learned about philosophy from Socrates, another great philosopher. Probably one of Plato's greatest contributions to society was not just his philosophies, but probably that he also came up with the concept of the very first school. If anyone here hates having to go to school, you can thank Plato for coming up with the concept. Calling his school Academy after the Greek hero Academus, Plato set up shop in a garden just outside of Athens, the capital city of ancient Greece. While there, he taught gymnastics, mathematics, and of course philosophy. Then again, taught may be the wrong word in this instance. Instead of teaching his pupils directly, Plato believed in open conversation. Besides teaching, there were several philosophic teachings that rendered him famous and known to this day. One of these is how he interpreted morals. In the days before Plato, philosophers were usually only concerned with two ways of looking at morals. Some thought that a single person should have his own set of morals, while the other half believed that the universe should live by a set of universally agreed upon morals. Let's take today's world, for example. Most people would say that to steal something would be morally wrong, and that is why there is a law not to steal stuff, because that law is almost universally accepted. Now let's say that every person had their own morals and no one had the exact same ones. So a person goes to rob a bank and the police show up. The robber might say, I find it morally acceptable to steal stuff. This would probably prompt the police to say, oh, drat's the luck, and move on. At the same time though, if everyone had completely different morals, then it would be pretty hard to make laws in the first place. Thankfully, Plato was concerned with not one or the other, but with both concepts. Plato attempted to grasp a reality in the world, something that made sense both in our world and the one beyond. In the process of attempting to find this reality, he inadvertently came up with the theory that the world is made of teeny tiny little building blocks that are invisible to our eyes. We know now that this theory is true because in the 17th to 18th centuries, work was conducted to discover the atom, the very thing that the ancient philosophers talked about. The way that Plato looked at it is that there are these teeny little building blocks of the universe that everything is made of, and those in turn make, well, the universe itself. Plato came to the conclusion that while everything will eventually die and turn into dust, he believed that when that happens, the atoms simply disperse, and thus the material being is no more. Plato said that everything flowed through nature, and by that he meant that there is one template for each species. Every atom that is associated with a horse stays with the horse, and cannot come back later to accidentally form some kind of weird hybrid. For example, let's say that this fellow comes along this stuff. He sees that all of the parts are similar, and so begins to build. When he has done so, some big jack comes by and tears it apart. All of the parts are still there though, and it can be rebuilt into what it was before, but it cannot be made into anything different. Ignoring the fact that these are Lego bricks and they can be made into almost anything, but you get the idea. So anyway, Plato eventually came up with the idea that there are not one but two worlds. The first is the material world that contains all of the things that we see and touch. For all the things that exist though, where did they come from?
Asgard.
Oh no, they do not come from Asgard. Do not interrupt me, Mr. Hopkins. Oh, disembodied voices, they are impossible to fuck with. Anyway, Plato concluded that these ideas for all of these things in the material world come from a world of ideas. It was in this world of ideas that our world was created by unknown beings, or as Plato would have probably believed, the mythological Greek gods. The theory of his is known as Plato's Theory of Ideas. His philosophical theories do not stop there though. They have only but scratched the surface. I bet all of you out there think that you are pretty smart people, yes? What if there's something you don't know though? Naturally, I would assume that you would go and look up whatever it is you were looking for. Let's say that I wanted to know about Newton's 3 laws. I could simply fire up this computer and search Newton's 3 laws into the search bar. Oh look! Okay, so as we can see, there was an equal but opposite reaction to his punch. That is me. Okay, so we can constantly expand our minds and learn new things, can we not? We can, but at the same time we cannot. Plato likens the world itself to a simple soap bubble. Remember back to the days of your youth, when you would go outside and blow soap bubbles. How long did those bubbles last? Not very long, as they could be carried away by wind, or would just burst upon hitting the ground. What would happen if you tried to study a soap bubble? You wouldn't get very far, would you? The bubble would burst before you really had a chance to look at it. That is similar to reality itself. It is constantly changing around us. So, how can we have true knowledge about anything if the world is constantly changing? We cannot. As much as people try to understand the universe and its meanings, we will not ever truly know, as we can really only have true knowledge about things that we understand and comprehend. Now, if you thought that was heavy, just wait. To recap just the tiniest bit, there are two worlds, the material one and the idea world. Expanding on that theory, Plato started to question where it was that the human soul came from. He thought that since the beginning of time,
mankind accepted a simple truth, that they were not alone in this universe.
for Pete's sake, I know that I originally wanted to do the chapter over myths, and you were going to narrate, but we scrapped that idea. Shut up! Thank you. Anyway, Plato thought that since the beginning of time, a person's soul was always there, just waiting to be used. At that point, the soul was in its perfect state. When the body is ready for the soul, it loses its memory to look at it that way. Eventually, though, it regains enough of its memory that it kind of reminds the brain that it is in an imperfect world. Realizing this, the person wants to be perfect again. This feeling is called eros. For problem is that most people are too caught up in stuff in the physical world, and so they cannot focus on getting back to this perfect world. When someone is strong-minded enough to look past all of that, then that is called the philosopher's way. Why, when you look at a lot of the ancient philosophers, they cared very little about the politics from their modern day. Plato explained it using what he called the cave myth. Let's take this for instance, that there are a bunch of people born in a cave and have never seen true sunlight, only the light of a fire behind a wall, and there are people behind this wall making it look like there are a bunch of scary demon things trying to constantly get inside the cave and eat them. They are nothing but shadows, but to them it is real. One day though, one of them manages to accidentally find his way outside. Knowing that these monsters are only shadows, he goes back inside to tell everyone else. When he does so, they don't believe him and don't follow. When he tries to force them outside, they kill him. Why was he killed? Well, part of it is that he threatens them with his stick, but the point is that they killed him because their weak minds could not comprehend what he was saying, and so they did what primitive men always do when he is frightened. This reflects when Plato's mentor was killed for basically outsmarting everyone else. So you can look at this as a philosophical story, or as a oh boo-hoo, look at this poor picked on philosophers story. I personally see it as kind of a bit of both. Now, though, we come to the final part. Now, while Plato was concerned with the afterlife, he was also concerned for the common man. Not himself, but for everyone else. Now you might be thinking to yourself, oh wow, what a great guy he was for caring about others before himself. But you might not think that in a moment. Plato came up with several ideas on what the perfect society for the common man might look like. But it is the top two that stand out. Plato's number one vision for the perfect society was one where philosophers were on top of the world and everyone else were basically the slaves for them to rule over. He thought that the common man could never govern himself without huge problems, so he envisioned himself and his colleagues on top of the world to rule mankind for them. Sounds kind of like two guys with mustaches that I know of. Basically, Plato dreamt up the very first feudalistic, totalitarian, communist-style type of government, where a select few rule all, and those that don't agree will be jailed or put to death for the betterment of mankind. Not so great now, is he? Although, while he said it was the best government style as there is little opposition, he did say that it was flawed. So, his second choice was a constitutional state. That sounds familiar. So, there we have Plato's theories and ideas and stuff. I hope your head is spinning too much because this was pretty heavy stuff. But now it seems that our time is at an end, so I thank you all so much for watching, and please don't forget to rate, comment, subscribe, and etc. to Ideas and Pictures. Have a good night!
You should take me seriously, even though I'm soft and little. Yellow sponge cake on the outside, baby. Sweet, sweet in the middle. I'm a deep fried hunk of trans fat and sugar. You hear me coming, I ain't no singer, I'm a Twinkie. He's a Twinkie, yeah, I'm a Twinkie in a ting-tong world. A Twinkie, he's a Twinkie, yeah, I'm a Twinkie in a ting-tong world. Come on! You can't resist me, I know you see me by the Dolly Madison. I'm a hostess with the most else. Come on, little Debbie, you know I'm number one. I'm a cream-filled goodie with a shovel like oh so long. Go on and put me in a box, it's where I belong. I'm a Twinkie, he's a Twinkie, yeah, I'm a Twinkie in a TikTok world. A Twinkie, just a Twinkie, yeah, I'm a Twinkie. TikTok world, a Twinkie, he's a Twinkie, I'm a Twinkie in a TikTok world, a Twinkie. magic in a cellophane wrapper.